bring in John Harper. John Harper's been covering Major League Baseball, been covering the Mets 25 years now, New York Daily News columnist. John, thanks for joining us on short notice. Your thoughts on the possibility of the Mets bringing up Tim Tebow this year?
Thanks, Dan. I have a feeling we're going to see him in September. And I would have had a major problem with it because Sandy Alderson had said he's going to be in a major league level at some point. I would have had a major problem with it if the Mets were still in a legitimate race at the time, but it doesn't look like they're going to be. And obviously, they're not going to be in a race. The season's lost already. So, in that case, I really wouldn't have a major issue with it. The guy has shown me a lot by just sticking it out in the minors. I didn't think he'd stick it out more than a year for sure. Riding the buses in Binghamton in the Eastern League, it's not a glamorous life. So I give him credit for that. He's not really considered a major league prospect at 30 years old with a 727 OPS and limited power, but he is earning his way on a daily basis and getting better.
Well, I could see in September, but I was curious about now, John, as bad as the Mets are, and let's face it, if you said Tebow was playing tomorrow night, I would watch the game. And I'm sure that if, the Mets, and I don't know if it's a way of saying, hey, but look over here, we're bad, but we got Tim Tebow up here. Is that something you think the Mets would be willing to entertain?
I haven't heard them say that. I think they'd be leery about it from a PR standpoint. They know it would look bad and kind of shine even more light on how weak their farm system is and how few prospects they actually have, which is why they can play Tebow in Double-A and nobody really says anything because they're not holding anybody back by doing that. Their farm system is a major issue for them. They look like they're headed for some tough times here. I think they need to have at least a limited rebuild and trade a Syndergaard, if not a deGrom, but I don't know if they'll do that just because I think they'd be wary of the PR. They'll take a hit for it, and I think they know that they can bring him up in September and maybe get fans here. At this point, I don't think they're thinking that way, but you never know with them.
What about trade possibilities? Jacob deGrom, keep hearing that name. The possibility that the Mets are sellers here coming up.
Yeah, I don't think they're going to trade deGrom. They're going to mainly because they're going to set the bar so high in anything they ask for from talking to people around baseball. They would want, say, not that they would ever trade him to the Yankees because they'd be so worried about him winning world championships there, but they would want, say, Gleyber Torres and about three of the other Yankees' top prospects, and that's not happening. But I do think there's a possibility they would trade Syndergaard, who's younger than deGrom, and that's the way I would go. I think deGrom has reached a level, such a high level, and it's too bad the Mets can't score for him. He's in that Cy Young race with Scherzer, one of the best pitchers in baseball. He's got that. He's a real athletic kid. He played shortstop in college before he got full-time pitching. Loose limb delivery. I think he can pitch well into his mid-30s, and he just turned 30. Syndergaard's younger, but I would look to trade him because I think you could get a haul for him in terms of prospects, and that's what they need if they're going to reset this thing and put this thing back in order in the next couple of years.
I love deGrom. He's another one of those guys that when I tune in to watch and he's on the mound, like I'll stay because I love his approach. It's like Scherzer. These guys who just get up there and bring it. And it's not fancy. It's just they're bringing it. And I'd hate to see them trade him, but every game it feels like he pitches great and there's no offensive support there for him at all.
Yeah, I know. I was there last night. 8 scoreless innings. He was great again against the Phillies. And the Mets offense is a disaster. The lineup they're putting out there is an abomination. They got a kid hitting 393 in Vegas in AAA. This kid McNeil might be kind of a late bloomer. He's not even a kid. He's 26. And yet they continue to play Jose Reyes now with Frazier on the DL at third base. Reyes hitting 168 for the season. It's too bad because deGrom deserves better. He should have 12, 13 wins at this point. He's 5-4, which I kind of wrote about. It really raises an interesting question about just how, owners obviously have looked at it differently now. Wins don't count for nearly as much. The guy with the lowest win total ever to win a Cy Young was Félix Hernández. I think it was 2010 with 13 wins. How low would voters go with deGrom? 9 wins? Would they go for 9 wins if he's got the best numbers? And Scherzer's probably going to be right there with him. So it's really going to be interesting to see. This kind of it might be a record-setting type of vote.
Yeah, but I'd have to look at the other candidates, John. If I look back to Félix Hernández, who was the other candidate and how many wins did he have? Was the second on the list? Did somebody even have 20 wins, 18 wins back then?
Yeah, I haven't looked that up recently. I think obviously some people had more wins, but that was kind of the era, right? That was kind of the turning point where voters were starting to look at the other numbers and realize, wins really are so dependent on run support and in deGrom's case, run support and a bad bullpen that you do. I mean, I think wins should still be considered, especially for two guys that are close with all the other numbers. And Scherzer, I think he's got 11 wins now. He's probably going to end up with more wins. But if all the other numbers are in deGrom's favor, that's going to be really interesting.
Talking to John Harper, New York Daily News columnist. Manny Machado, I find it interesting with the Yankees, who do have a great prospect at third. You got Didi at short, and they might be in the running or headlining everybody for Manny Machado. What do you think the odds are in these sweepstakes?
Yeah, I did a column posting the odds, and I had the Dodgers, Brewers, and Diamondbacks as lower or better odds at getting them. But it does sound like the Yankees. I thought this was Cashman kind of doing his usual thing. He always is in on the big guys just in case. Like in the case of Stanton kind of fell in their lap. They didn't have to give up hardly anything. This is different because I think they're going to have to give up something significant. And they love this kid Andujar. They probably have to. They're going to. I mean, if they get Machado, they're going to have him play third base, not shortstop, even if that's not what he wants. It doesn't make a lot of sense because they really need a pitcher. I know there's not a great pitcher out there. I mean, not counting deGrom or Syndergaard, they're not getting him. J Happ, Cole Hamels, those kind of guys. So maybe I've heard that Cashman thinks maybe they by adding Machado, the defense and offense he brings would give them an edge in that race with the Red Sox because they're so desperate to stay out of that wild card game by winning the AL East. But it's still kind of strange to me if they're going to give up a big package when they could just wait and sign him in the offseason. I still have to kind of see it to believe it.
I've been talking about Chris Sale. He's another one of those guys. There's certain guys, there's like 7 pitchers, it feels like, when I'm flipping through, and Sale was on the mound last night. I mean, it's remarkable, John, when you see the disparity, and he can throw an 81-mile-an-hour breaking ball, and then he can throw 99, and he paints corners. I mean, he's fearless, too, but he looks like he weighs, $160 out there. Pretty amazing.
He's all arms and legs, man. That's what's so tough on, especially lefties. He's just coming at you from the first base dugout, it looks like sometimes. And you're right, he is fun. All these guys you said are so much fun to watch. One thing about them, they all work quick.
Yeah.
That's a big thing. Teams, their teammates love that. And, yeah, this guy, he throws that. He throws upper 90s, but then he throws that slider on to the back foot of right-handed hitters, and they can't even it looks like they've never seen it before. He is. He's one of the best, and he deserves to win a Cy Young one of these years as well.
Well, he was, in relative obscurity there for 7 years with Chicago. And if you don't play in the postseason, how much do you think, how much is factored in for pitchers with postseason performance? We talk about hitters, but when it comes to the Hall of Fame, how much do we rely on that with pitchers?
The Hall of Fame?
Yeah.
I thought you were going to say the Cy Young. Yeah, to me, MVP voting is different from the Cy Young. MVP voting, I think, does matter if you're a contender. But Cy Young has always been who's the best, just trying to figure out who had the best year as a pitcher. And I think it does count for Hall of Fame, though. To me, a guy like Schilling should be in largely because of what he did in the postseason. Those, especially for a pitcher, those are the biggest games. They can control those games if they're great. And Schilling has done that as well as anybody. Maybe his off-the-field stuff has hurt him in some ways. But I think a guy like that should really count for a lot. I think postseason for pitchers should really matter. But,
John, why does it matter, Schilling political beliefs?
I don't think it does. I vote for him. I know, but I know some people have said, especially, remember the comment he made about the journalist and I think he liked something, a T-shirt somebody had about hanging journalists or something. You can't take that stuff personally, though. If you're a voter, you have to be above that. You have to separate yourself. Now, to me, that's a separate issue from the PED stuff. I don't vote for Bonds or Clemens, the PEDs, but Schilling, that's just an off the field. That's a personal thing. I would never let that get in the way of a vote.
Why isn't Sosa in strong consideration for the Hall of Fame with no positive test on record? Correct.
Yeah, no positive test, but I think there's enough circumstantial evidence there. And I think, as a voter, it's not a court of law. To me, I can make up my mind on how strongly I feel about guys. And for that matter, there's nothing really, there's no test or anything to tie Bonds and Clemens to that.
Yeah.
But I believe, I'm 100% sure they did it. I'm almost 100% sure Sosa did it, just based on watching his career over the years. So I think that's the reason for that.
Yeah, it's still fascinating, but I view this younger group of baseball writers, it feels like they have a different impression, different opinion than some of us older folks, John.
Yeah, I know. The older guys are getting weeded out. It's definitely changing. And the younger guy, you're right, the younger guys, and a lot of those guys that are now voting, and you have to have a BBWA card for 10 years to vote, weren't there during all this stuff. And I think they do have a different feel about it. They look at it differently. They kind of, the feeling is a couple of things. Either they were all doing it, or, well, I'm not going to be the judge and jury and decide who was doing it and who wasn't when we're really not sure. And I agree with that to some extent. But if I feel strongly about guys who were doing it, I don't believe everybody was doing it, first of all. So I think a lot of guys did get cheated along the way. So that's my stance on it. But I did end up voting for guys like Piazza and Bagwell, because if I'm not sure, I don't feel I can deny them that honor. To me, it is the highest honor in the game. And if I'm sure about a Bonds and Clemens, I'm just not going to reward them with that honor. And I know people make the argument, well, baseball, the Hall of Fame is a museum, but their stuff is in the Hall of Fame. They just don't have the plaque. So that's where I stand on that.
John, good stuff. Thanks for joining us. We appreciate your time.
Okay, thanks, Dan.
That's John Harper, New York Daily News columnist.
For more Dan Patrick Show, tune to Audience Channel 239 on DirecTV or download the Dan Patrick Show app.